Hey everybody. Today I thought I'd talk about group of 5 teams. 2020 was like a huge year for group of 5 teams popping up and beating Power 5 teams, and I know not all are created equal. Like, for example, Cincinnati's better than any given team at the worst part of each conference, so I get that, but it is still a talent difference from group of 5 to Power 5, so I thought I'd take a look at this year's upcoming group of 5 and Power 5 games and see which ones I thought could potentially sway the way of group of 5. So let's check it out. I'm going to start out with the SEC. First, we got Arkansas versus Georgia Southern. Look, even the great Alabama struggled against Georgia Southern in their triple option. If you guys remember Nick Saban's famous quote, they're running through us like shit through a tin horn. And the triple option is nothing to be messed with, especially for teams that don't play it regularly. As a Tech fan, I know this. Triple option guy for over a decade I was, and we're moved on from that now, but there's still a few teams that run it, and it helps close the talent gap because a lot of teams don't know how to defend it. So, listen, Arkansas losing to Georgia Southern is very possible. At least it might be a close game. So I put that on this list. Okay, next is Georgia State. Georgia State appears twice on this list. Now, look, everybody remembers the 2019 Georgia State versus Tennessee game where Georgia State freaking upset Tennessee, and it was hilarious. Well, let's be honest here. It has a chance of happening again with Auburn, their first-year head coach. I think Auburn this year is a big-time wild card, and I just wouldn't put it past them to lose to Georgia State. They might be an awful team, plus it's sandwiched between the Penn State and LSU game. So, keep an eye out for that. All right, next we got Georgia versus UAB. UAB is a pretty strong opponent, man. They're Conference USA champs last year, and you get them right after the Clemson game, you might catch them. I'm kidding. All right, next is Mississippi State. They play Louisiana Tech their first game, which isn't exactly a terrible team, but Mississippi State has kind of got it together lately, so I think it's less likely. They did have a sort of close game against Tulsa last year, which I personally thought Tulsa would win that game because Mississippi State was so bad last year, but wound up pulling that off in a crazy bowl with that crazy brawl that broke out. And I think them losing to Louisiana Tech is less likely. But they do play Memphis week 3, so I thought it was worth mentioning. Those are two group of 5 teams that aren't bad by any means. And let's face it, Mississippi State, not the greatest lately. But I still think they win both. They've proven themselves in the Tulsa game, in my eyes, to where I think that they are an improving program. So remember, Tulsa was running with Cincinnati and everything, and Mississippi State was able to hang with Georgia for a while. I think Mississippi State's on the upswing, honestly. So I doubt they lose those games. Okay, next is Ole Miss versus Liberty. What a storyline in this one. These are two good-ass coaches, but also questionable moral character. And you have the whole thing that Hugh Freeze used to be coaching at Ole Miss, and now he's coming back as the alma mater. Freaking Liberty took down all kinds of ACC teams last year, and it was a great year for Liberty last year. And I think Ole Miss wins the game just because of the talent. But this is going to be a big-time storyline and a great game to watch, and I will tune into this one for sure. Next is South Carolina versus East Carolina. This is the second game of the year for the Gamecocks, and it's against another Carolina team that is going to want to take them out really bad. It's only week 2 for the brand-new coach. Never been a head coach before or even been a coordinator. So we might honestly see a loss here for the Gamecocks week 2. That would suck. But East Carolina is not a bad group of 5 teams by any means. So South Carolina needs to watch themselves in this time. I got this as an upset alert. I hate to do it to Tennessee, but I got to have them in here, man. They play Bowling Green and South Alabama out of conference. I personally think they will win. But with everything going on there, it's possible Tennessee has a historically bad season and drops one of these. I don't think they will because Bowling Green really sucks, and South Alabama is towards the end of the season where Tennessee might have had some things figured out. In my honest opinion, I don't really see how they lose either of these games, but there is the possibility that Tennessee just has an awful time. And Hey, here's hoping that Tennessee doesn't drop either of these. They've been put through enough. All right, next is Vandy versus Colorado State. You know, Vandy's so bad, I just had to throw them in here because it's always possible that they lose, to anyone. But they're an SEC team, so I give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay, moving on to the ACC. So some teams play Notre Dame, so I'll have to leave them out because Notre Dame's freaking special, so we got to do their own segment on freaking Notre Dame. A lot of ACC teams play Notre Dame this year. I'm just going to leave them out because I'd have to go through basically Notre Dame's entire schedule. I'll probably wind up doing a Notre Dame schedule prediction too, so we can just talk about it in those videos. And also BYU. Notre Dame's just so irritating. Like, I got to have this special section, like this special cliff note of freaking Notre Dame when I'm talking about this. Like, Urgh! Okay, Louisville versus UCF. This one has potential to be a really good game. I'm looking at Louisville to be a much improved team this year and make a bowl, so they better get this win. As for UCF, they have the first-year head coach Gus Malzahn, and while he's not a good recruiter, he's coming into some talent there, and I think he can make that work. Not an easy game for Louisville at all. Over the past few years, UCF has been one of the best group of 5 teams out there. This is one of the more underrated games I've seen that has big potential. I didn't even notice it until I did this list, so that's a good thing. I'm definitely going to be checking that out. I think both teams probably be around the same skill level. Louisville better get this win, though, if they want to crawl themselves to bowl eligibility. Okay, NC State, they play Louisiana Tech too, which if you remember, Mississippi State plays them, but North Carolina and Mississippi State play each other, so we have a funny triangle going on here, but I imagine that they both handle Louisiana Tech. It is possible, though, that they might sneak up and grab a win against one of these teams. I don't know. Okay, Syracuse versus Ohio. When I was doing my schedule prediction for Syracuse, I honestly had a hard time picking this game, just because Syracuse is that bad. But Ohio isn't anything special themselves in their conference, so I figured the Cuse takes it. Liberty, on the other hand, who Syracuse plays, will beat them again this year, just like they did last year. Okay, Wake Forest versus Army. So doing predictions for this game is tough because the triple option does funny things. Wake Forest gets a bye week before, so I have them sneaking out a win against Army, but stay tuned for my Wake Forest predictions because I believe that they do not come out of this game unscathed. You'll have to see what I mean by that. Moving on, Duke versus Charlotte. Oh my God, they might lose. It's the first game of the season. Duke might lose to Charlotte, first game of the season. Oof. I mean, everybody knows Duke's going to have a bad year. Is it really that embarrassing for them to lose to Charlotte? I mean, I don't think anybody's going to get on them for it. Yeah. Okay, next is Miami versus App State. This could be interesting. App State is a really good Sun Belt team, and I think Miami is just a tick overrated. Just did my schedule predictions for them. This is right after the Alabama game and right before the Michigan State game. So it's kind of placed in an interesting spot on their schedule in week 2 and could lead to a good game. App State pretty good. But overall, I pretty much pick Miami to win this. The talent gap is real. And Miami will be looking to get their first win. Okay, next and last for the ACC is North Carolina versus Georgia State. Yes, Georgia State plays Auburn and North Carolina in the same year. That's a pretty tough schedule. But if there's anything I learned from last year, it's that UNC can and will lose games that they shouldn't. And Georgia State is more than happy to take up on those opportunities. Georgia State plays Auburn and UNC. It's very possible they grab a win from one of them. Moving on to the Big 12, not many here. Kansas plays Coastal Carolina again. Might as well call that a loss right now. They might even lose to South Dakota, an FCS team. Kansas is probably the worst team in the Power 5. Baylor versus Texas State. Baylor was so bad last year, it wasn't even funny. But Texas State was too, so I give this one to Baylor. And they'll probably be better this year anyway. Kansas State versus Nevada. I think Kansas State will be a pretty good team this year, but Nevada's not a bad team at all, man. If anybody remembers last year, Nevada was sneaky good, so, I thought I'd throw it in here. I think Kansas State wins, though. Oklahoma State versus Tulsa. Now, remember last year when the Big 12 is getting beat by all these teams. Oklahoma State managed to hang on against Tulsa, but, they'll probably be worse than last year, too. And Tulsa isn't bad at all, so this could turn into something here. Maybe Tulsa's looking to get that win, that Power 5 win. TCU versus SMU. This is a good matchup. SMUs are really good in the AAC, and TCU will be really good this year, too. I give it to TCU, but this is a pretty cool matchup nonetheless. Texas versus Louisiana. I've seen a lot of people talk about this as a potential upset for Texas. First-year head coach Sark better be on his A game because Louisiana is no pushover. I personally don't see Texas losing to this, but, they're a bit of a wild card this year, so who knows. I think it's worth tuning in, though. And then last in the Big 12, you got Texas Tech versus Houston. Very possible we see Houston win here. They're a good team. And Texas Tech, not so much. We all know who the superior Tech school is. Okay, Big Ten. Illinois versus UTSA. Illinois might actually lose. They're terrible. Have a brand new head coach. They also play Charlotte. So how about Charlotte with that amazing Power 5 schedule of Illinois and Duke? They're really swinging for the fences. Okay, next is Minnesota and Miami of Ohio. Right after Ohio State. Minnesota's been pretty bad, so who knows? Next is Wisconsin versus Army. Hey, that triple option. It's pretty tricky, and you see it trip up a lot of good teams. I don't think Wisconsin loses here, though. They're going to be really good this year, and I think they even got a shot at winning the Big Ten. Indiana versus Cincinnati. One of the best on this list of Power 5 and Group of 5 matchups. This will definitely be a great game. Two up-and-coming programs. I have no idea what to think of this. Maybe even Cincy. Indiana. A lot of people said it was false hype last year, but this is going to be a great game. They were two top 10 teams last year, and this is going to be awesome. So I got that as one of my biggest ones. Ohio State versus Tulsa. I mean, Ohio State will roll in this game, but still cool they play one of the best AAC teams. Penn State versus Ball State. Hey, it's week 2, right after the Wisconsin game. Ball State won their conference last year, and I still think Penn State wins, though, unless they're just as bad as last year. But let's face it, they're not going to be. They're not going to be as bad as last year. No chance. Okay, Rutgers versus Temple. I hate to do it to them, but I got to include Rutgers on this week 1 matchup. I think Rutgers wins because they're on the upswing, but it's still Rutgers. So, all right, last but not least, the Pac-12, and then freaking Notre Dame, who is the last and the least. But anyway. Arizona versus San Diego State. I picked Arizona to win, but geez, man, San Diego State's a good team, and it's week 2 right after the BYU game for Arizona. Possible win here for San Diego. Cal versus Nevada. I highly doubt Cal loses because they're pretty good, but they're not exactly the cream of the crop in the Pac-12. And, of course, they're a Pac-12 team, so they're susceptible to do Pac-12 things. It's also week 1, so. See a lot of teams rusty pretty much in week 1. Oregon versus Fresno State. It's week 1. I think Oregon wins easily and convincingly. But Fresno State's not terrible, and like I said, Pac-12. Oregon State versus Hawaii. Very possible loss here. Oregon State will be terrible. Okay. UCLA also plays Fresno State and Hawaii, and I expect them to whoop both because I think UCLA will be really good this year. USC versus San Jose State. Week 1, kind of cool because San Jose State was really good last year. I just think USC's too talented though to trip up on or anything. So might be first for the first half though. You never know. Probably will in fact week 1. So give me frickin' San Jose State on that halftime point spread. Utah versus San Diego State, last in the Pac-12. Not a gimme by any means. Utah's had a crappy year last year. I think they bounce back, though, and get it done against San Diego State. Utah's pretty good. Okay, now I got to talk about Notre freaking Dame because they're special. And BYU. It would be funny to consider Notre Dame as a group of 5 school, but I basically, like I said earlier, have to go through their entire schedule, so I'll just talk about the group of 5 teams they play. They play Cincy this year. That's going to be an amazing game. Oh my God. Since he has to freaking play Notre Dame and Indiana this year, man. I mean, if they pull those 2 games off, they got a real argument for the playoff. You know? Notre Dame's going to be good still. They're going to take a step back. They're going to be good. Since he's got a real shot at winning this game. And Notre Dame plays Navy. It's always, I think Notre Dame wins, but it's, always kind of interesting to see that triple option. Notre Dame is used to playing the triple option. Like I said, it kind of just gets teams that aren't used to defending it. But, hey, Notre Dame didn't play the triple option last year, so. Next, BYU plays Boise State. That could be a good game. Boise State's always really good. Of course, they just lost their coach, but, And they also get a bye week to prepare for Georgia Southern and the triple option. So Georgia Southern and these triple option teams are getting some interesting matchups. And there you have it. Those are the group of 5 teams playing Power 5 teams that I think maybe the group of 5's got a shot of winning, or just that I thought was interesting. Last year was a crazy year for this stuff, so, hey, you never know. I would keep an eye out for these games, though. Hey, go Jackets, and I'll see you guys next time.